The commercial vehicle industry is spared nothing. It is always having to face up to new and above all stiffer challenges. Whether it's local deliveries, intermodal, or long-distance transport, the competition is continuously increasing, and so are the cost pressures. Truck driving is getting more and more expensive. There are various reasons for this. The road tolls recently introduced in Germany, the tremendous rise in fuel prices, and the fact that more and more roundabouts with high curbs are springing up like mushrooms, increasing tire wear. Just like the approaches to towns and villages, which are all too often narrow and therefore frequently lead to damage caused by mounting curbs. So it's high time to clamp down on costs. High time for the BPW self-steering axle. The technically perfected BPW self-steering axle is the ideal solution for transport companies to save money and aggravation. When the truck drives around a corner, or as in this case on a circular track, the wheels of the third axle turn in their natural direction of travel. The self-steering function ensures that the wheels are turned to follow the radius of the corner and the undulating thrust plates slide against one another. The steering angle is set according to the load and controlled purely mechanically. The self-steering axle has to be locked when reversing. This happens using an electrical signal when reverse gear is engaged. The steering axle is reactivated when a forward gear is engaged. Self-steering axles have a long tradition at BPW. A representative 2-year long-term study shows that up to 10,000 liters of fuel can be saved over a distance of 1,000,000 kilometers. The forces acting on the tractor unit play a decisive role in this context. As the measurements show, these forces are very low with the self-steering axle. The situation with a rigid axle is completely different. Our experiment shows that the effective tractive forces are up to 60% lower with a steering axle. This protects the vehicle chassis and cuts fuel bills.
The tractor and trailer unit does not distort as much. It drives much more easily. Approaching corners is significantly easier. I always say it's a bit like skiing. If you come down the hill with a flourish, it is much more fluent than if you try to corner in a series of jerks. This is very similar.
The BPW self-steering axle allows the wheels to roll instead of scuffing. This is shown by our comparative pictures with the heat-sensitive camera. The heat buildup, and hence the tire wear, are significantly reduced with the self-steering axle, even on long-distance runs. The tire on the rigid axle can be seen to heat up as a result of the higher transverse forces. Tire wear is most pronounced in the case of a trailer. The great advantage of the self-steering axle is particularly obvious when cornering slowly. The tires on the third axle roll smoothly over the asphalt. The transverse forces that occur are minimal, and hence, so is the wear. This also protects the vehicle's chassis and improves maneuverability. Investigations show that tire life can be doubled by the self-steering axle depending on the type of use. The low tire abrasion noticeably reduces costs for the transport company. Over a distance of 1,000,000 kilometers, this means a saving of over 40 tires per semi-trailer.
We were able to double our average tire life. And of course, the tires wear evenly on all the axles. Previously, the situation was tire change on axle 1, tire change on axle 3, tire change on axle 2. Today, a vehicle comes in once for service. We can change all 6 tires at once, and this results in less administration, less time off the road, as well as the corresponding cost benefits.
The difference with the rigid axle is very obvious. The tire really squeals as it is dragged across the asphalt. Measurements have shown that fuel consumption is up to 1 liter per 100 kilometers higher than with a steering axle. And the rubber left behind on the road surface makes this clear. The high level of tire wear with a rigid axle is quite remarkable. The findings from practical applications are unambiguous.
On long-distance work on the motorway, and I'm an optimist in this respect, we probably now cover 500,000 kilometers with one set of tires on a trailer. Before, we used to get an average of 180 to 200 or 250,000 kilometers maximum by changing the tires around on the axles.
The maneuverability of tractor unit and trailer now plays an ever more important role, and not just for normal delivery work. The law requires a maximum turning area for tractor-trailer units in a 360-degree turn. The internal radius has to be 5.3 meters and the external 12.5 meters. A unit with a steering axle always meets these regulations. Registration is no problem. The extra area that a unit with a rigid axle needs can clearly be seen superimposed here. Semi-trailers with rigid axles with the first axle raised often fail to meet the legal requirements in full.
As petrol tanker operators, we exclusively use steering axles because we could not manage without them. Getting into a filling station is sometimes very difficult, and the vehicles have to be used everywhere. For instance, we have underground filling stations right in the middle of the city in Cologne, and steer axles are simply essential for that.
No matter whether it's local deliveries, intermodal, or long-distance transport, the BPW self-steering axle is the correct economical solution. A summary of the benefits. Tire life is doubled. Up to 10,000 liters of fuel saved. Fewer expensive incidents of tire damage. Protection for the vehicle chassis. Protection for roads and loading bays. Depending on the type of use, the BPW self-steering axle pays for itself in no time at all. Find out for yourself, because it pays to make an early move.
BPW, the quality factor.